I recently read an article where the business owner confidently says, I don't save for retirement because I have great cash flow from my business. Your financial advisor's advice is wrong. Listen to me instead. There's a lot of people sharing alternative financial advice about retirement, and I want to make sure that you don't get hurt by it. In this video, I'll explain why I think that advice that abandons diversification, risk management, and probability thinking is dangerous for most investors. If you stay with me for about 5 or 6 minutes, I'll share a simple test that I use to evaluate if the advice is worth considering. The article's premise is that creating cash flow is the goal, and I agree that cash flow matters. Retirement isn't about a big number on a statement, it's about income you can rely on. Where I disagree is with how the idea is being presented as advice. What's really being asserted here is this: cash flow from a business you own is more valuable than net worth built through traditional saving and investing. The implication is that if your business generates enough income, you don't need to save for retirement at all. That idea can work, but only in very specific situations. And it leaves out something critical. Cash flow and net worth serve different goals. Cash flow pays your bills. Net worth gives you resilience, flexibility, and options when something goes wrong. When you dismiss net worth entirely, you're also dismissing that margin of safety that protects you when cash flow is interrupted. And business cash flow, by its nature, is fragile. Most of these types of articles rely on a personal success story. Someone buys a business, improves it, and turns it into a reliable source of cash flow. And that's great. I think it's great when people start businesses. But here's the reality. For every person who successfully turned a business into an ATM, there are far more business owners who didn't. You don't hear as much from the people whose businesses required constant reinvestment, who depended entirely on their own labor, whose businesses never produced enough cash flow, or simply failed outright. We must avoid confusing the career path of entrepreneurship with a retirement strategy. And I've noticed that these arguments often point to bonds to suggest that people fail financially because they invest in them. That misrepresents how real financial plans work. Bonds aren't meant to build wealth on their own. They're meant to manage risk, reduce volatility, smooth income. They're meant to protect against bad timing in life. Criticizing bonds for low returns is like criticizing a seatbelt because it doesn't make your car go faster. It misunderstands their role in the system. A responsible plan considers growth assets for long-term purchasing power, income assets for stability, diversification to manage uncertainty, and human limitations, including bad luck and bad timing. Here's what I'm saying. I think it's great for people to start businesses. Entrepreneurship can be an excellent source of cash flow, but the goal should be diversified sources of cash flow. It's the same principle we've always known. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Concentrating your entire financial future in a single business, even when you control it, is still concentration risk. Now, here's a test that I use to evaluate financial advice. If the advice fails any of these, it's too risky for me. The first is the single point of failure. Ask yourself, if the one thing this plan relies on, like a single business, breaks or disappears, what happens to me? If the answer is, well, I could lose everything, then I'd avoid it. Diversification is simply the process of removing single points of failure from your life. Second question, the incapacity test. Ask yourself, does this plan still work if I'm no longer the one running it? The article assumes that you have the health and skills to keep a business throwing off cash forever. A real retirement strategy should work even when you can't. If the cash flow requires your experience to survive, well, that's a problem. And three, the probability versus possibility test. Ask yourself, is this a repeatable strategy for most people, or is it just a possibility based on one person's luck? Many people share success stories, possibility, but fiduciary advice is based on what works for the majority of people over time. In other words, probability. Betting your future on being the exception to the rule is a major operational hazard. Standard fiduciary advice is designed to pass all three of these tests. It assumes you might get sick, the market might crash, or you might not be the smartest person in the room every day. It builds redundancy into your life. In my world of risk management, redundancy is what keeps the plane in the air if one engine fails. So, to wrap up, cash flow keeps life going. Net worth keeps you from being trapped. It gives you options. Cash flow matters, but mistaking a successful example for a repeatable strategy is how people get hurt financially. The most resilient retirement plans don't depend on perfect execution or exceptional outcomes or everything going right. They depend on diversification, balance, and systems that still work when life doesn't. That's the problem with I don't save for retirement advice. Please give this video a like and consider subscribing. It helps this channel grow and reach others who may also value these topics. Thanks so much for watching.